I'm here today with DeAndre of Awake in Providence. They have a new album coming out October 21st on Unique Leader Records. The name of the album is Eternity. Perhaps for you, it's been feeling like an eternity since you wrote the album until the album comes out. Is that the case?
Yeah, kind of similar to what we were just talking about. I think I started writing Eternity in 2019, roughly about like right after the Black Sun, the Blood Moon came out. It was like I had some tracks that I was just like two Horror of the Old Gods and We Are Eternity were I think the first two I wrote, and those were the first two that came out. But yeah, it was I believe I started writing it in 2019, and it's just it didn't stop, no joke, writing it until it was just about to be delivered to the label. Yeah.
So when you're writing an album, do you have, specifically for Eternity, do you have a vision of what you want the album to be, or that vision kind of becomes a little bit more clear with the more tracks that you start to finish and putting it into a pile?
Eternity is definitely a little bit different than the current stuff I'm working on as far as how my process has worked, because it's changed over the years, especially with adding such a dense layer like an orchestra. When I started Eternity, there was no plans for orchestral stuff. And then I got wildly inspired by Flesh God Apocalypse. And just for pretty much for the internet to know, no, it wasn't Lorna Shore. It was Flesh God Apocalypse.
Yeah, let the internet know. I think this is important.
It doesn't stop. It is what it is. It comes with the territory of being in a similar genre, but I got introduced to Flesh God Apocalypse, and I was like, okay, this is what metal should be. So I was like, I gotta get like deeper into what that is. So with Eternity, it was not planned for that initially when I started writing those two songs. It wasn't until I got to like song 3 or 4 of the writing process, which I don't remember which one that was, that I was like, okay, I could hear it. I can kind of understand where a classical element would go. And at the time I was super limited with my samples and stuff. So it was a lot of learning to get to the point of being able to see the vision entirely. And then once I got to where I felt comfortable with what I was doing with the actual material itself, it made it easier to then see the completed vision, and then the story took off from there. So yeah, it was a learning curve that then fed the vision, as far as how it comes to Eternity.
I was going to ask you about the orchestrations down the line, but since you brought them up now, I'll throw my question into the mix now. Did you, not having them in the back of your mind at the beginning of the process, did that make the process a little bit more difficult to then incorporate them? And then the second part of that question is this why we see, when we listen to the album, there's some songs where the orchestrations are better integrated into the atmosphere of the tracks, and then there's some songs where the atmosphere and the orchestrations feel a little bit separated from one another?
Yeah, I could definitely, that is 100% accurate, actually. I would say that by the time the orchestration became a major focal point for that album, it wasn't until I moved also too in the process. So it wasn't until, like I said, maybe I'll say like a year and a half ago, or actually, no, it could have been a year and a half ago. I would say maybe a year ago, leading into this year. So that would be the half, I guess. It became like, okay, now I'm really doing this. Like, I'm definitely doing this. Because there were like small pieces that I originally had, but I had it with like really garbage samples. So I couldn't really, like I said, going back to the vision, I couldn't really see the vision like with the samples, because they weren't really that good. So there were some songs, for example, actually don't want to say the wrong name of the song, because
your material, I mean, you can do whatever you want.
I've been like, the names have changed. I've changed the names of the song so many times, so I just want to double check the actual release name. Okay, all right, yeah. So specifically with the Hunt of the Wraith, that song, for example, I think that was the third one I wrote, and that one didn't have a lot. That one doesn't have a lot of orchestration, because the vision I had for that song didn't really call for it. So that song has some orchestration, and it's not until we get to the end of the song that the orchestration really takes off, and that transitions into the following one. but you know, it was like I didn't have good enough samples, so I couldn't see it completely. So the song didn't really fit some of the orchestrations. So like I kind of left a little bare. But then once I got way better samples and I spent pretty much my life savings on really good sample libraries, that's when it started to really come together. And that's why, like, if you look at something like God Killer has the orchestration very, very prominent and clean throughout, except in one section. But that was, I already tried it and figured things out with Eternity. And then God Killer was, I hate to tell everybody, but God Killer was written after Eternity. So that's why, like, you'll see God Killer, it seems a little bit more fleshed out with the orchestral ideas. Whereas with Eternity, it's almost there, but then the end of the album gets like, is there. Like, so the trilogy, or the Trinity, is as we call it. So the 3-part song thing. That's where, like, for example, I really kind of started to clean up the orchestration and get it to where I wanted it to be, because those were written later.
Mm-hmm. Do you look at each album as an opportunity to grow the sound of the band, evolve the sound of the band? I'm sure you're not going to be satisfied with releasing the same album 3 times. So as you look past at the previous records and now you look at this one, what do you see as the biggest jump in growth from them?
I would say my knowledge. So I've been writing our music from the start, and I didn't come from a metal background at all. I didn't grow up listening to metal or anything like that, and because of that, I didn't know what deathcore was. So if you can find it, and I don't want people to find it, but if they can find our first demo, you'll see it's a really weird 3 songs, because for lack of a better term, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So every release is me learning more and more about a particular genre, or I would say learning more about myself musically, and learning what I want to put into the stuff. So it's like it keeps becoming, oh, there he is, Jesse's here.
We just became party of 3.
Hey,
Jesse.
sorry I'm late. I had trouble getting in.
No problem, no problem.
So yeah, we're pretty much just talking about Eternity right now. But to finish out that question really quickly, it was definitely each one of the releases that we have, and now the subsequent stuff, is me learning more and more, and kind of just putting that into the music. So like the major thing right now, which I'm definitely going to tell the world, is I didn't know music theory until like 6 months ago. So now I'm learning music theory, and that's becoming a more major point of my writing. And it's informing my writing a lot better. So like the stuff that I'm sending to the guys now, I think is some of the best material I've ever done. But that's because of the fact that now I have knowledge behind it versus doing kind of whatever. So it's like so some of Eternity was rewritten because of that. So there's stuff in Eternity that I went back and was like, this doesn't sound right musically, so now I need to fix that. And like, so there's a bunch of stuff that I went back and cleaned up. But the process is, for me, always is each release is something new. I learned something new, whether I'm learning it in the process of writing or I learned it prior to writing it. So obviously the most gigantic jump with the Black Sun to Eternity is the orchestral elements. And I would say like the clean vocals too. There's a lot more clean vocals on Eternity than there was the last record. But that's just, again, a matter of I'm gonna try stuff, and I'm also gonna try stuff, and I'm also gonna learn stuff. And luckily the guys in the band, and Jesse being one of them, of course, trust me with the crazy things and the crazy ideas I come up with.
So one of the great things about this record is that it feels very compact in terms of you're really not giving the listener a chance to say, hey, I'm going to pause and I'm going to go do something else, because there's really no pauses or breaks between tracks. The album just feels like it's continuously flowing from song to song. Is that something that you think about even before start writing songs, or do you work on those finer details in terms of how you guys are going to glue these tracks in order for the album to have that sense of continuity?
I've always, after I got introduced to Between the Buried and Me a bunch of years ago with the Colors album, I was like, this is how all albums should be. They should all be one gigantic song. Like one of the most like badass things ever is when you start a song and then you get to the end of the song, you're like, holy shit, it's been an hour. Like what just happened? And you just get engrossed in the music. So it's something that I do unintentionally. For example, and Jesse can attest to this as well. The current track list of Eternity was not the way that not the way I wrote the songs, and it wasn't even the track list that I finalized and said this is what it should be. And I sent multiple different versions of the track list to the guys, like, hey, does this version sound right? Does this way work? Does this transition sound good? Do we like this version? And like we found kind of what way felt the best as far as how the songs flowed. Like for example, the interlude that's at the end of the album, that originally was dead smack in the middle. That was the one that we all said, yep, that's what it should be. Like we agreed on that. And then as like through listening to it, it felt like exactly what you're saying. It felt like a pause. And I thought that's what the album needed, but then I took the interlude, I moved it to the end, I sent it to the guys, and they saw the same thing I saw, which was it didn't need a pause because the story wasn't done. So it's like once we get to the interlude on where it sits now, that's where it feels more comfortable and it felt more legitimate. So that's my long form way to say I don't plan for it to happen, but I would like it to happen essentially.
And the guys are cool with that. The violent nature of the sound on this album also, in my opinion, is enhanced by the fluidity of the record. When you have an album that connects itself this well, does that give you a little bit more freedom to all of you guys to push the envelope as far as the heaviness, as far as the aggression is concerned, because you're not really overburdening the listener with pauses and breaks constantly?
Yeah, I mean, like I also I don't really I guess the thing to say is like I'm not the biggest fan of breakdowns and like stuff getting slower a lot, because like something that me and Jesse have connected on is our love for tech death and just stuff that's fast and doesn't stop. But there is still a fun to playing breakdowns. There's still a fun to seeing people go nuts for like the slowest part of the song. There's no music playing and people are going the nuttiest they've been going the whole time. So like there's fun and energy to that that kind of does that. But the aggression and kind of what we try, it's like I'm very much I'll shoot a text to Jesse, be like, hey dude, are you comfortable playing at 140 BPM? Because yeah, I'm like, let's just try something nuts. You know, it might not work, but you know, that's kind of where I am, and obviously Jesse could speak to this as well. Like I'm just trying shit, and I'm trying to see how they feel about it, and if they're into it, then we keep it going. I don't know if Jesse, if you want to talk to that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I like having the space in there. Sometimes it breaks up having those long sections where there's just a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, I don't know, having the space to I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. There's a car alarm going off outside my window here. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, having those spaces just to break up all the intensity of the album is nice for sure.
Now, both of you, when you look back at the recording process, when you look back at how this whole album is put together, is there anything that sticks in your mind as far as a challenge that you guys have turned into growth as far as perhaps the next record?
Oh, I'm gonna let Jesse answer that question for sure after recording the drums on Eternity.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely had to step up my game entirely to play the drums for this album. It was very, very challenging. Going into the next one, hopefully it'll be easier from what I've learned from this. Mostly just because of the speed of it and the technicality of some of the songs is pretty insane. Especially the ones that most people haven't heard yet.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like there like Pedro, you've heard the record, but the song that almost broke both of us was the Chord of the Trinity, because that song is like 7.5 minutes of just straight anger. Like, and it's like it's playing Dark Souls pretty much. That song is playing Dark Souls.
You know,
But playing
when I was
all three.
listening to the record, I was thinking, I mean, whoever's playing the drums on this, I don't know, they need a massage afterwards, or they must have like the calves the size, I don't know, of the Grand Canyon or something, because it was like, it sounded at times more of a machine gun than it did drums. And the power that they have stays pretty compact throughout the entire record. I mean, there's ebbs and flows, but it stays pretty compact. So it's definitely a workout, I'm sure, for you, Jesse, playing this record. And is that going to have an impact on set lists going forward in terms of what do you guys pick from this album to include on the set list?
Yeah, for sure.
It might, yeah.
Yeah, it's, you know, because it's like when you think about like we've talked about this a little bit. Like, for example, the song we're talking about, Chord of the Trinity, it's to me, I when I think about the song, I'm like, I don't want to look at that song. But when, you know, and I feel like Jesse may feel the same way. It's like, I don't want to look at that song. I don't even think about it. But when we listen to it, it's like, damn, that song's sick though, dude. It's just a tech death monster. So it's like, there are times where that's not appropriate, you know? So it's like, if we play with certain bands, like it wouldn't be logical to play that song, you know? Like, I think that's more of what, how we kind of look at what we might do. Cause the set list is up to all of us. You know, we all want to make sure we're having a good time playing. We're all going to suggest different songs and stuff like that and see what makes the most sense. There are things that are like, we should just play that song because we should. And there are songs where it's like, we have to play this song because of X, you know? So there's definitely a matter of it. And then the other piece of it too, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit. If I didn't think that Jesse could do it, like if I didn't think Jesse could play these songs, then there would, you know, Jesse wouldn't be in the band. You know, same thing with if I didn't think I could do it, if I wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? So it's like the group of people that we are, we're gonna push each other, and we're gonna push each other into the right direction. So subsequently, the set list that we choose, it's gonna be a pushed set list, of course, because it's like we know we got to do it, but within reason, definitely within reason.
So I got a drummer and a guitar player here. I have to ask you guys this question. Some albums fall under one or under the other as far as what drives the listener forward, not just from song to song, but within the songs themselves. Like if you look at genres like power metal, heavily dependent on the guitars to push that listener forward. Some songs in some bands depend more on the drums to create the bass line that moves everything forward. What is moving people forward on this album? Is it the guitars? Is it the drums? Is it both?
I'll say it this way. I am not a fan of the current I guess trend that, you know, there's one thing that is dictating a band or dictating a sound or whatever the case is. So for me, it's definitely a matter of everything is pushing the song forward. You know, it's like if we didn't have Adam's vocals on a particular part, that part doesn't work. If Jesse's part isn't grooving if that groove isn't killing it, it's not going to work. If whatever me and Jordan are playing is not adding something to that section, it's not going to work. You know, like it's a full complete picture. It's definitely like that, you know, because it's like there are groove sections where Jesse's playing a certain type of groove that's working with the guitar part that Jordan's playing, and me and the bass are doing something a little bit different, you know, or there's different things to pay attention to. There's different things to focus on, but it's the complete picture that continues the forward momentum. At least that's how I write stuff, and that's how I think about
it. Do you agree?
I definitely agree with that. Yeah, the spotlight kind of moves like to different instruments as you're listening to it. And if you listen to it again and again, you can really pick out other parts that are going on. But sometimes I do feel like the drums are what's pushing the song. Sometimes I feel like whatever the guitar is doing is pushing it. Sometimes the orchestra. But yeah, it's definitely all of it as a like compositional whole.
We got to talk about the vocals. I know we don't have Adam here, but I'm going to ask you guys about the clean vocals, because the harsh vocals, I mean, spot on. Like just really nailing this record, bringing perhaps giving a voice to the aggression that you guys had created with the sound. The clean vocals, like you mentioned, a lot more on this record than before. Is that a calculated risk? Is that something that you tried out because the songs kind of allowed it to be there, or is something that you want to continue to push forward using more clean vocals, maybe balance out the amount between the two?
Yeah, I've always, like I said, I didn't come from a metal background, so I didn't have the kind of predefined idea that all metal has to have screaming all the time. Plus, there are times on Eternity that I don't think it would have made sense for there to be screaming vocals there. It's like, so as I'm writing parts, I'm writing songs just because I'm writing how I think the thing should sound. I'm not thinking about the vocals. That's not something that's at my forefront. I'm not writing to our vocalist. I'm not even writing to myself as a vocalist. I'm just writing to what I think would be super sick to play. The vocals are then subsequent of that. So it's like Adam's gonna kill it. So no matter what I throw at him or no matter what he comes up with, we already know he's gonna do a phenomenal job on that. As far as my vocals, it definitely was a calculated risk because I know I want to do it. I know I've wanted to add clean vocals to our sound for a while, but I know how people are. I know how fans get with clean vocals. Some people true like I don't know. You might know of it. Or Jesse may have definitely heard of it. But there was a blog forever that was no clean vocals. Like that was the blog, and it was huge. Like people loved it, and that's such a major piece of. You'll see it in comments like, "Oh, clean vocals are for bitches," and "clean vocals are." Wait, I don't know if we can curse. Can we curse?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Okay, like clean vocals. Get clean vocals out of here. They suck or they're stupid. People hate clean vocals, but I come from the school of thought that, like we were talking about with the compositional part, if it fits and it works and it serves the song, why not? Why not? There's no reason not to do it. And the response that we've gotten on, or that we have received from We Are Eternity, and a lot of the reactions that we've seen from We Are Eternity, when the chorus kicks in, no one's like, ew. Like the reactions that we've seen, people are like, they're surprised by it, but then they're into it. And then even in the comments of We Are Eternity, people are super into it. And that's something that my girlfriend, who she's not really into metal, but since us being together, she's been getting more into it. She's starting to also see that clean vocals is not a normal thing. And it's not something that even she's like, I'm nervous for it to come out because of how much there is on the album.
Yeah, there's quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and to even speak to that further, the beginning of the album didn't start with clean vocals. That wasn't the original version of the album. It didn't start with clean vocals at all. But I did a version of it. I liked the way it sounded. I sent it to Adam. I was like, yo, dude, this is where my brain is with this. And he was into it. We sent it to the rest of the guys. Everybody else was into it. I was like, all right, fuck it. We're just going to run with it. And I just kept adding and kept adding and kept adding because it just felt right. So the calculated part of it is I've always wanted to do it. But the risk part definitely is there of like the album comes out next week. And I'm just like, I don't know what people are going to say about that first song, dude. Because it's just straight up singing. It's not a harsh, I'm just singing.
It was very romantic.
That's exactly what I was going for. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sing my heart out to people and let's see what happens.
See what happens. I got to ask you both this question. What do you see as right now? The band is in a much different place where it was 10 years ago. So right now, when people talk about Awake in Providence, what do you see as the biggest misconception that people have towards the band?
I got mine, so I'll let Jesse go first.
Probably who the vocalist is.
Oh, good answer. Can you elaborate on that?
A lot of people seem to think Will is either still in the band or this is Adam's first release with the band, or just not knowing what's going on there, which understandable, but yeah, very funny.
Yeah, to just briefly speak on that as well. We've had like so many member changes over the years, but the most prevalent one definitely, and it has been the least member change too, we've only had 3 vocalists in the lifespan of the band, but we have many different bass players, we have many different guitar players, different drummers, like that we've gone through a lot. But vocalists only 3. It was our original vocalist, Chris, and then Will, and then now Adam. But yeah, I kind of understand it, because if you Google the band's name, you'll still see a lot of pictures of Will. But in those pictures, there's also like 2 other dudes that aren't in the band.
Yeah, the band had more members back then.
Exactly. It's like it was you look at Awake in Providence, it was just Will. Just like
Metalheads in math. Maybe that's where the problem lies. It becomes a little bit of an issue for some of them. Do you have another misconception, or is that the biggest one?
The other one being kind of similar to what I said earlier is that we're so influenced by Lorna Shore. That's the biggest one for me. Like, listen, I know the guys. I've listened to them. I'm not in, or we're not heavily influenced by Lorna Shore. There's other stuff that we're super into, and that's the stuff that we draw a lot of inspiration from. And the music that I create and the music that we put out is subsequent of the influences that we collectively have. And that's definitely a huge misconception that like they're driving. So I guess I'll say us, they're driving us forward, from what we're trying, like we're trying things because of them. It's like, nah, dude, I wanted to do orchestral stuff because I like orchestral. I like classical music. And Flesh God is super sick. I'm like, let me give it a shot. So like that's where that is.
I have one last question for you guys, and that is more towards the label like deathcore. When people talk about a genre like that, these days it becomes really difficult to classify bands under one genre because you have so many different influences coming in, like you said, with the clean vocals, with the orchestras, with everything like that. Are you guys concerned when it comes to people labeling the band under one umbrella, under one genre, as you move forward and as you grow and as you start to, incorporate other elements that are perhaps not traditional from the genre that people pigeonhole you in?
I definitely got an answer, but I don't want to just monopolize the answer. So Jesse, go for it.
Personally, I don't really care what people call it. I call it different things depending on who I'm talking to. Like if I'm talking to some random guy who just found out I'm in a band, I might just call it death metal. But if I'm talking to somebody who's wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt, I might say it's more like deathcore or more like symphonic deathcore or something. I don't really care about labels myself.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was gonna say. It's like
Yeah.
I don't think I can tell you like that's not something that if you look at our group chat anytime we're ever having a conversation about anything, I can tell you that the genre doesn't really come up at all. And that's just because it's not like a major point for us. Like we've people call us black and deathcore, they call us death metal, they call us technical death metal, black and deathcore, technical deathcore. It's there's so many names. And very similar to what Jesse said, I do the same thing. If I'm talking to somebody and if I say I'm in a metal band and they say like Metallica, I just go, yeah. Like, yeah, dude, it's just like Metallica. Check out the link.
Yeah, it's just, with a smaller budget.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, definitely, exactly like Metallica. So like that's something that for I like obviously what Jesse just said as well as for myself. It's not. We don't care, call it whatever you want. Like I've even like in my house to my girlfriend and my cats, I'm like, we're a cinema core band, man, because I'm like I'm scoring a movie underneath our music, so we're a cinema band now. So I'm like I'm telling you, watch, you heard it here first, cinema core. That's it.
Listen, we're living in an age that you can add core to anything and that becomes a genre. Like that's the world we're currently living in. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the obvious. That's just what is happening, and you're totally fine by tagging yourself as cinema core. I'm sure that would fly, and I'm sure people would get all into it. So
exactly, somewhere.
When it comes to the Metallica thing, just tell them that you guys are like Metallica, but if you were doing a colonoscopy, so it's a little bit more aggressive. It comes a little bit deeper in you, and then it comes outside. So that's kind of maybe the best way to describe it.
Yeah. That's what it is, dude. It's like there's like you said, like so many things are being added to all these different. Like we're just taking so many different words and putting core on the end, and saying like that's what it is. So it's just like we're gonna go with whatever. So we just call it metal, but we were told that we were told we couldn't put. Exactly. Somebody, I forgot who I was talking to about it, but I was like, I was like changing the info on Facebook or something like that. And I think I want to say that the conversation happened within the band, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna put metal. And somebody was like, we can't put metal because then we're gonna piss off all the metal people. It's just like, yeah, right. All right, cool. What do we? Then it's like, all right, we're gonna put technical death metal. Now we're gonna piss off all technical death metal people. Like, so many.
Hey,
Dude.
listen, at the end of the day, you can't make everybody happy. You just have to make yourselves happy. That's what it matters, really.
Exactly.
Guys, thank you very much for your time today, man. Jesse, DeAndre, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about the record, to talk about the band. I just want to remind everybody, Eternity comes out October 21st on Unique Leader Records. Go pick it up. It's a fun record to listen to. It definitely hits you hard, and it doesn't stop hitting until that last song is over. So if you're into that kind of shit like I am, I like to feel like I'm going on this long ride through the experience of listening to a record. This album is definitely for you. So guys, thank you very much for your time today.
Pedro, thank you for having us, for sure, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care, guys.